competitor in this race, Donald Trump, was criminally indicted in a politically motivated prosecution, this is wrong. This is dangerous. We're skating on thin ice as a country right now. I think we may be heading on our way to a national divorce. I'm running for president because I care about a national revival instead, but this is a step in the wrong direction. You don't know what? Alvin Bragg, he ran on a campaign, a political campaign for his position, pledging to investigate Donald Trump. You don't know what he did today? He delivered on a campaign promise. That is not how our justice system is supposed to work. Justice is supposed to be impartial. If this had been anybody else other than Donald Trump, on this set of facts, it would have been charged as a misdemeanor at most, if at all. Yet what we see right now is a ruling party in our country that will stop at nothing, even using police force to arrest its political opponents. We're not some banana republic, guys. We are the United States of America. We're supposed to be that shining city on a hill for the rest of the world that still gives hope to the free world as we know it. And yet look at what we have become today. This is not the America that I know. And you know what? You do have a constitutional right to protest this decision if you want to. The only ask I will make is do it peacefully and do it lawfully if that's the decision you make. Because, again, we're in dangerous times today. I care about having one country left at the end of this. And if Alvin Bragg or even Joe Biden wants to do something, let alone the rest of this Republican field, we can all unite to say that even if we're running against Donald Trump, we at least want to let the voters decide who gets to be the next president rather than some Javert-style prosecutor sitting in New York City. That is not the country I know. That is not the country that my parents came to. That is not the country that we pledge allegiance to. That is not the United States. I'm going to campaign events in South Carolina here today. I'm curious how other audience members see it as well. I wouldn't be surprised if there are others in this race who are quietly celebrating it. But I think that for me, I'm in this for a reason, to revive a national identity. And I said this on stage at CPAC, by the way. And this was in some ways directed at differentiating myself from Trump. This is to a pro-Trump audience. You know, the thing you're coached to say is don't talk about Trump. I actually didn't. On stage, I said, look, I said all the reasons why I respect what he did. But the question I asked is, are we on a path to a national divorce? Or do we want a national revival? And the case for my candidacy is I am in the camp of a national revival. I do not want to see a national divorce in this country. And I think that I'm running because I'm best positioned to unify the country. I personally know Donald Trump. I think he cares about national unity too. I'm running because I think I'm better positioned to deliver it. And I made that case to the CPAC audience, pro-Trump audience, differentiating myself from Donald Trump. So I'm not afraid to do that. But if I'm looking at today's announcement, but if I just finish for 1 second, today's announcement I worry about for the same reason that I differentiate myself from Trump, is that I think this takes us a step closer to a national divorce. I think that when you politicize the justice system itself to prosecute a political opponent of the party in power, the lead political opponent of the party in power, that is not one small step, but a giant leap towards a national divorce if they follow through it too. And so it's in some ways the same reason that I'm drawn into this race as a candidate running against Trump that also draws me to be a hardliner against the possibility that Trump be indicted on ministerial and politicized grounds. It's another sad moment in our country's history. The 45th president of the United States, Donald Trump, has yet again been indicted by the Biden DOJ, a political party in power that is now repeatedly using police force to indict and arrest and potentially eliminate its political opponents from competition. This is a politicized prosecution. It is a political persecution through prosecution, now in a third indictment just in a matter of months against the person who is still at present the lead contender in the Republican primary for U.S. president. The allegations in this indictment fall flat. It is wrong and incorrect and inaccurate to place blame for what happened on January 6th at the feet of Donald Trump. I said this at the time. I've said it ever since then. I continue to say it today. I would not have made the same judgments that Donald Trump did in how he handled that day. But that's different from saying that he committed a crime. He did not. He specifically told the protesters that day to behave peacefully. The First Amendment in this country gives political protesters the ability to express themselves and their opinions freely. Donald Trump was not responsible for what happened on January 6th. You want to know what was responsible? I said this in the days after January 6, 2021, just as I say it today. Systematic, pervasive censorship in this country. That was after a year where we had told people across this nation that you had to stay locked down in your house, in your basement, and shut up, sit down, do as you're told. If you question that, you're racist, you're anti-science, your social media accounts were silenced. You had to stay home and lock down unless you were part of BLM or Antifa, in which case it was perfectly fine to roam the streets of this country and burn many of them down. That was the double standard that then applied and said that if you said the virus originated in a lab in Wuhan, you were again a racist and had your internet accounts shut down. You were then told you had an election where you could express yourself to put the right person in charge of fixing these problems, and instead, your accounts were suppressed if you sent a mere message saying that the Hunter Biden laptop story from the New York Post was real. You had your accounts locked. Even the New York Post had its own account locked. And if you repeatedly then tell people they cannot speak, that is when they scream. If you repeatedly tell people they cannot scream, that is when they tear things down. And I think we are making a grave mistake in this country by trying to pin the blame for that at the feet of one man. But the first and most important step that we as candidates can take in this race is to speak and speak forcefully on the side of principle. It would be a lot easier for me as a Republican candidate in this race if Donald Trump were not in it. But I don't want to win this election, unlike others, by eliminating our competition, by a federal administrative police state arresting my opponents. I want to do it the way that our founding fathers believed we should have, starting in 1776. That it is the people of this country, where every person's voice and vote counts equally. That is how we decide who governs this country, not by a federal administrative police state. And I challenge the Biden administration with this FOIA request. I challenge my fellow contenders in this race with this commitment letter to say that we will pardon Trump on January 20th, 2025, and nobody, either Biden or the other contenders in this race, are going to be able to hide from that truth. Donald Trump will now be apparently indicted imminently, if the current facts reported today are to be believed, for his role in January 6th. What does that do? This is different from any of the other prior indictments against Trump, and people are missing the importance of this indictment in particular. Not only is this a federal indictment like the last one in the documents case, but more importantly, this one under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment could disqualify President Trump from either running for U.S. president or potentially even being removed as U.S. president if he is elected. I think this sets a dangerous precedent in our country. It's worth understanding the history here. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says that anyone who's taken an oath to office, a congressman, a senator, or a president, can be removed from office or disqualified from running for office if they've also engaged in an insurrection against the United States. So if it is held that President Trump did play a role in an insurrection against the U.S., that disqualifies him from being U.S. president under the 14th Amendment. In fact, the fact of bringing this prosecution against President Trump, if that does proceed, may even allow states like New Mexico to disqualify Trump from appearing on the ballot because they've already held in their state court system, all the way up to the New Mexico Supreme Court, as they did against Coy Griffin, that January 6th was indeed an insurrection. So even a two-bit state court can disqualify him on the state ballot. I say this as someone who is running against President Trump for the presidency in this election, in this GOP primary. I do not want to see my opponents eliminated because of the actions of a corrupt federal administrative police state. That is why I've said that if I'm elected, I will shut the FBI and other corrupt institutions down. But I don't want to get there by seeing my competition eliminated. That is not how our constitutional republic is supposed to function. We're not supposed to be a country where the party in power uses police force to indict and eliminate its political opponents. And yet now we're on the cusp of potentially a third indictment
which, unlike the last two, literally under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, could be invoked to eliminate my competition, President Trump, from holding office, and that is wrong.
Earlier this week, I sued the U.S. Department of Justice, and I further filed an additional FOIA request to understand what President Biden told Jack Smith, what Merrick Garland told Jack Smith, because we want the truth. Today, I'm in front of the courthouse in Washington, D.C., where the 45th President of the United States, my competitor in this race, will be arraigned later today. But I think that the symbolic moment of today is something far deeper than just this case. We live in an era of the noble lie, the so-called lie that the government tells to its people because it believes the people can't handle the truth. Why is it that we see the rise of 3 different indictments, 3 supposedly independent prosecutions at the same time in the midst of a presidential election? It's because the government does not trust the people to select their leaders. This is the old worldview rearing its ugly head again. We fought a revolution in this country in 1776 for a simple idea, that we the people determine how we select our leaders and have a government that is accountable to its people rather than the other way around. Yet today we now live in a country where when the people question that government, they are themselves the subject of scrutiny. That is wrong. I was in Nashville yesterday demanding the release of that transgender shooters manifesto. Tell the truth. Biden, Garland, tell us the truth about what you actually told Jack Smith. And you go back over the last year, it's the same story all over again. Tell us the truth about the COVID origin. Tell us the truth about where the virus originated. Tell us the truth about what we know about vaccine mandates and mask mandates. Even in a recent hearing about UFOs in Congress, just tell us the truth instead of repeatedly hiding from us the information that we need as a people. Turns out that trust is a two-way relationship. The reason that the people don't trust the government is that our government no longer trusts the people. So is this a politicized persecution through prosecution? I certainly believe it is. But it's the government's job to be transparent about exactly who told who what to bring about these prosecutions, because the fact they're arising at the same time is no accident. And I think it's best that the government now be transparent with the people about what their intentions actually are. Without that transparency, we can only expect far worse in the future.
Somebody who's running in an election in a primary against Trump here, this has nothing to do with me, and even nothing to do even with Trump, actually. It has to do with integrity in the country, where if this, for these set of same facts, would somebody else have been criminally prosecuted? The answer is absolutely not. And so this argument that he should be protected just because he's a political candidate is a straw man, because the real answer is that he's being prosecuted precisely because he is one. And I think that that is just something that sets a dangerous precedent. And I would ask everyone on this space right here to just run through a thought experiment for a second. Just try it on like a set of clothes, okay? I promise you can put it back on the rack if it doesn't fit afterwards. But for a second, just try this on like a set of clothes, okay? It's now 2004. Bush is the U.S. president. Dick Cheney is the vice president. These are the evil warmongers, okay? The face of the left, of modern evil as the left saw it at the time. John Kerry's running for president of the United States. There's a ministerial campaign finance violation, say involving his wife, Teresa Heinz Kerry, or whatever. There's plenty to talk about there. Some ministerial campaign finance violation that normally would have either gone with a slap on the wrist or no notice at all, that is instead criminally prosecuted in a way that prevents John Kerry from running in that election. Be honest with yourself. Look inside and ask yourself what any progressive, any liberal, frankly, any American would have said at the time. That it was wrong. Full stop. And you know what? They would have been right, because it would have been a rejection of the electoral process itself to say that the people of this country don't get to decide who actually governs, but that it's the party in power. And you mark my words, if we set a precedent in this country where the ruling party in America can use police power to actually arrest its political opponents, I think that is the beginning of the end of the American experiment itself. And I am not saying anything about
Forget about defending Donald Trump. Forget about, whether this is a Republican or a Democrat issue. On the issue of first principles itself, I can think of no greater way to head on a march to a national divorce, to actually undermine trust in our electoral system, than to use police power to eliminate one of the political candidates. And I say this as a political candidate who's running against him. I think this about deeper principles than politics, and I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Today was an important day in the country. So the reason I'm doing this is because the rest of the Republican field, I think, has been deafeningly silent about an important issue in the country today. Yes, I know it's St. Patrick's Day weekend. Yes, I know there's a lot of other issues in education or elsewhere that need to be addressed that others have talked about. But that's not the news of today. Okay, the news of today was that this morning we learned that it is likely that the New York Manhattan District Attorney is likely to indict a former president of the United States who is running for office. Now, I want to be very clear. I am in a presidential primary running against that individual, Donald Trump. But what I'm about to say has nothing to do with Donald Trump and everything to do with the integrity of an election and the integrity of a self-governing democracy. So I don't care whether you root for Trump or whether you don't. If you root for the integrity of our constitutional republic, then you need to be on the side of being really clear. We cannot have politically empowered prosecutors eliminating the opposition of a ruling party using arrest power. It is a sad day in America. It is a dark day in America if you have the ruling party in this country using police power to arrest its political opposition. That would be the beginning of the end as we know it. And I'll ask everybody here, wherever you are, on supporting Trump or not, I don't care. A thought experiment. Rewind back to 2004. Okay, if Bush and Cheney used police power in this country to arrest John Kerry for a technical campaign finance violation that normally would never have been charged, and if most as a misdemeanor, liberals in this country would have cried bloody murder. And you know what? They would have been right. They would have had a point, and I promise to you, I would have been standing there right there with them to say, even if John Kerry's not my man, this is not the way we run elections in this country. This is not the way we run a justice system in our country. Whether or not, whatever your politics are, we put principles first. And so the thing that disappoints me is I said that this morning as soon as I read the news. I didn't ask my political consultants or anything else. Put out a statement the fastest way I knew how, that was on Twitter. And I expected my lead Republican fellow candidates in this race, prospective or actual, to follow suit. Because this isn't about, we're running against the guy, that's fine. But this is about the principles. We should want to win not by eliminating the competition, but by actually earning the trust of the voters. That's what I'm trying to do, okay? What I heard instead was silence. And so the announcement I wanted to make tonight, to be crystal clear, is by tomorrow morning, I would like for even the beloved donor class favorites in this race, including Nikki Haley, including Ron DeSantis, to join me in calling on the New York Manhattan District Attorney to abandon this political persecution through prosecution. It's a very clear statement. Either you're on that side of actually avoiding that political persecution as prosecution, or you're not. And if you're not, that's fine. You better explain why. But I think the Republican voter base, the Republican primary voters, the conservative movement deserves transparency. It deserves candor. And if you're not going to stand up, then you need to step out of the way. We need to stop being fake in our party. We need to stop being beholden to a donor class that, as we speak, is being asked for permission to say the things that we're saying. The GOP actually needs to liberate itself from that donor class and start speaking candidly to its base again. Teddy Roosevelt said, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." Well, right now we have leaders in this party who are willing to speak loudly, but when push comes to shove, they carry a small stick. Teddy Roosevelt is rolling over in his grave, but no longer. I'm going to be very clear. It is a challenge. It is a demand that I make upon my fellow candidates running in this race, Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley included, to clearly come out and state whether they join me in a call to that Manhattan District Attorney
to abandon a political prosecution that if they do, that will be good for this country. And if they don't, that will be the beginning, I think, of the end of much of the